when we realize that we are not what we experience, we are not the experience, then we truly learn to be at peace. People's words, people's action, we deal with them on a daily basis. From those experiences, we can easily find ourselves having a good day or a bad day. Those experiences can determine, what kind of day we're having. I'm here to say don't take shape to it. When we react, defend, or take shape to the situation, we end up absorbing energy. That's what I want to share. In other words, don't entertain. I find that the minute I take shape to a negative situation, I give it power. And I can easily, at that point, absorb that energy. It can change your mood and shift your energy. And people have grown very sensitive to this. So sensitive that it becomes unbearable for them. At one point it was for me. Some people numb, avoid. Some people go off the grid altogether to avoid absorbing or dealing with people's negativity. And you hear this in everyday language. I need to protect my peace, or I need to protect my energy, or you fight fire with fire, or even an eye for an eye. Some situations will test us, try to make us overreact, things that don't even deserve our attention when you really observe. What I notice is that whenever I react impulsively to a situation, there is an awareness of this. Before, consciously, I wasn't aware because I was swollen in ego. I needed to prove something. I needed to defend something. Like I needed to have the last word. Because once I've reacted impulsively, I still felt troubled in my spirit. I don't know if you can relate to that. Impulsive reactions don't keep us safe. It feels like they leave us wide open. And that is why people, I feel, is always trying to protect their energy. But maybe it's being done the wrong way. We absorb different energies first because we get attached to it in some kind of way through association, identifying, and the outcome of this is our reaction. So it's not so much that what I find with myself is it's not, before my reaction, I identify. And the outcome is the reaction to whatever I associated with or I identified with. Something I identified with so strongly that I needed to either defend it or react to it. And what I realize is that's what I was trying to protect. That's what I meant by I need to protect my peace. But what I was really trying to prevent was myself from reacting to a negative situation in a negative way, if that makes sense. In some ways, we're pulled into the situation and whatever energy that situation brings, we start to absorb that. Stay with me here. If it's anger, you also become angry. If it's resistance, like someone not agreeing with you, that's my mother calling, sorry. I'll finish this. If it's resistance, like someone not agreeing with you, you can disagree. But that disagreement becomes a resistance energetically, if that makes sense. In my observing of my own self, I've seen this. There's this resistant energy because that person put up this resistance, and it's okay for us to disagree, but then the outcome of all of that is this resistant energy. And that's why I say don't take shape to it. Don't take shape to the negative experience. Observe. I find that observing before reacting really does help. And on a deeper dimension, that simply means be present. That pause between the inhale and the exhale, the pause between the inhale and the exhale when we are at rest, there's a pause there, but there's hardly any pause that separates the inhale from the exhale when we are upset, if you notice. Notice that. I recognize that as we move through life, these situations arise when we find ourselves trying to protect ourselves from negative energies. And it's not enough to just know how to read energy. I feel like that's the easy part, and that's the part that most people focus on, knowing how to read the energy. But that's the easy part. The important part, or the deeper dimension, is knowing yourself. So you can recognize what is not you, what is not us. Whatever is happening externally in the outer world, you can recognize that that is not me. And this is not, I'm not here to, I don't think people are evil. That's how I can bring it to you. I don't think people are evil, but if you don't know yourself and you leave yourself open, you can do evil acts. You can absorb negativity, so much negativity that it reflects, it reveals itself in action. Evil is an act, an action. Acting unconsciously, but it's not that we're not conscious about what we're doing. We're acting on a lower level of consciousness. And we leave ourselves open at that point. The understanding of the matter for me is the less aware of ourselves, the more we absorb what doesn't belong to us. The more we see it as who we are, the concepts, the conditionings, behavioral patterns, the more we're drawn into defending the concept of who we think we are. The deeper path, the only path, I would say, is self-awareness, to return to presence when we find ourselves being pulled into a negative way of being. And this is a real thing. There are things out there in the world that is simply trying to get our attention, to absorb our attention. But knowing yourself, as I'm always saying, presence is your true identity, pure and still. It allows me to move through my experiences without taking shape, especially to negativity, without going numb. You know, I worked in healthcare for a long time. I wasn't a practitioner. I worked within the administrative area, but I saw enough. I observed enough. And I guess the reason why this is coming back to me is because I saw how, for many folks, doing what you do, and this could be in many professions, doing what you do, you become numb to it in order to survive it in a way. But being present allows me to move through all the negativity without absorbing, or more importantly, losing myself. Most of the time when we find ourselves in a negative space or carrying negative energies, because we're identifying with what we are experiencing, and that is not truly who we are. So it shows up as, maybe in the body, it shows up as not feeling right. Because it's not who you are. And when you see it in others, it might show up as toxic energy. And that's not who you are. And the ego at this point will want to react or prove something, but presence is to be present. Is not to try to change or fix anything or prove anything or recreate the moment. It's just to be present in it. Just be in it by simply just observing. Yeah. In that observation, that's awareness, that's wisdom and understanding. That's where it all lives, in that spaciousness of being present. To remain, to just simply remain, be still. To not attach, but to be present. So don't take shape. The real work isn't about blocking energy. And I find, I was there, I was really, I was that person that would always try to find techniques and ways of blocking energy. And then I realized that if I'm not associating or identifying with it, then I don't need to block it, because then it's not affecting me. I'm not absorbing it. I don't need to participate in it, if that makes sense. It's about knowing ourselves deep enough to recognize what isn't you. That's really what it's about. Sometimes I have to remind myself of this. I have to remind myself of it. Because if we are not, I want to use the word careful, if we're not careful. In other words, what I'm saying, if we're not present, we can easily get caught up in a moment. We can easily get caught up in a negative experience. I'm not saying that I am grounded, that nothing bothers me. No, of course not. But this is a reminder, a note to self, a reminder to self while I'm sharing with you to remain present. It's a calm awareness. So we're not pulled out, because it's not just negative situation. I feel it's the situation that absorbs so much of our attention that we start losing ourselves. Those situations can look like different things. They can look like a relationship as well that consumes us. Then we start to forget ourselves. And then you get lost in it. And that's when we start absorbing whatever energy the situation presents. We start to absorb it. We can self-sabotage, we can self-doubt. That's the outcome of not knowing yourself in negative situation. It almost feels like you're disappearing. And you start to question. You don't know, you start to grab on, you want to grab a hold of anything. And in that, you're absorbing all of that stuff, all of the energies that are around you. So I'm just here to share that with you and to remind you the real work is not about blocking energy. It's really about knowing yourself deep enough that you will recognize from the start what isn't you. So you don't end up having to block energy. You don't end up having to do all this stuff to protect yourself from all the negativity, because the world out there, I don't really even have to say it, it's a lot of negativity out there. And some people have grown so sensitive to it that they begin to numb. And I feel like when you're numb, you're not experiencing, you're blocking yourself from experiencing. You hold yourself back in a way. But life is full. Once you really start to flow with life, you understand what I mean by life is free. There's a liberty, there's a freedom that comes with knowing yourself and being present in the moment. So you're not absorbing all that negativity and taking it into your body, into your mind, into your thoughts, because they live there too as well. Thank you. Thank you for listening.